difficult conversations. What am I talking about? I'm talking about personnel conversations or issues with a vendor, or sometimes even requesting something. Maybe it's a promotion or a raise. These conversations can feel very difficult. But why? There's several reasons. They include feeling like we aren't being kind if we have this conversation, that we're not being nice if we bring up these things. Another is we think these conversations are just too hard. This was me. We think that they require skills we don't have, or that they maybe require us to be someone we aren't. For years, I watched one of my supervisors rock difficult conversations. She had them flawlessly and often got what she wanted, but she and I led very differently. And I knew that I just never would be her. So it made it nearly impossible when I thought that the only way through a difficult conversation was to be like her. And many of us think that these conversations require very specific skills and attributes, maybe that we don't have. Another, and this one may step on some toes, is we want to control how people think and feel. We want to stay on the island. We want people to like us. This is our human nature. And so if we think that there's a possibility that someone will leave this conversation feeling upset or annoyed or frustrated or angry or any of those types of emotions, we want to control how they feel. And it's impossible to do that through some of these conversations. And so because of that, there is a friction and these conversations become more difficult. Another and maybe final reason is we don't want to be uncomfortable. In a moment, we are going to talk through a framework for having conversations like this. And I hope that you feel supported and more confident when you have them. That being said, we are still human, and some of these conversations are going to feel uncomfortable. And so being against that and resisting that means that we maybe won't have them. So when we don't want to be uncomfortable, we don't have the conversation. When we allow ourselves, maybe they become a little easier. So why do we even need to have these conversations in the first place? Why are difficult conversations important? I love this quote by Joseph Campbell that says, "The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek." What does that mean? The conversation you're avoiding or that you really don't want to have holds the outcome and results that you really want. We don't have these conversations just for the sake of having them. There is something on the other side. There is a change or a result that we want that is on the other side of that conversation. I like to put these results into 3 buckets, the reasons that these conversations are important. The first is for your team, for their effectiveness, for their satisfaction, even for culture building. We need to have these difficult conversations sometimes. How often has there maybe been an issue that needs to be addressed and you don't want to have that conversation, so you avoid it, and the rest of the team starts to feel annoyed that you're not confronting that issue. So you have these conversations for your team often, again, for their effectiveness, satisfaction, and even to build that company culture. The second bucket on why we have these conversations and why they're important is for the individual that you're going to have that conversation with, for their growth, and even for fairness. If someone is not meeting expectations, they deserve to know. If you think you're being unkind by having that conversation, maybe you're being unkind by not having the conversation. Brene Brown talks about how clear is kind, and this is so true in the context of difficult conversations. Being clear, bringing up these issues, using this framework we're about to talk about is kind for that individual, and it's fair. The third bucket on why these kinds of conversations are important is for you, for your future self, for being able to see the results that you're capable of. Again, back to that quote of "the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek." There is something on the other side of that conversation that the future you really wants. And so you will grow that muscle. You will be able to have more of these conversations and grow your capacity as a leader by having these kinds of conversations. You will become the kind of person who can hold people accountable, who creates new and amazing things, who builds up your team, and who supports a better culture by having these kinds of conversations. So why do we have a framework? There's a few reasons. One, a framework allows you to be you. Whereas a script kind of puts you in a box, it perpetuates that idea that there's one way to have these kinds of conversations. A framework gives you guideposts so that you have a scaffolding to work within, but you still get to speak the way you want to speak. You get to bring up the things that you think are important. You get to focus on what matters while having that scaffolding around you. The other reason that we have a framework is because in some ways it really creates a sense of safety around having those expectations and assurance that you know what you're going to say, how you're going to say it, and the more you use this framework with your team, you have a shared framework that you can all use together. So before we get started and diving into the framework, I want to talk about uncovering what you believe. What you believe about the person you're about to have this conversation with. What you believe about the topic and your ability to deal with it. What you even think about your ability to have this conversation. Uncovering those thoughts is really important. If you haven't watched the session on the self-coaching model, I encourage you to check that out when you're done here because it talks about why those beliefs, why those thoughts are really important because they affect the actions that we take and the outcomes and results that we have. So once you uncover that, you can decide if those kinds of beliefs and thoughts are serving you, if they're going to help, or if you need to do some self-coaching and create some more intentional models that will move you in the direction you want to go for this conversation. Once you're done with that, it's time to create your conversation framework. We're going to talk about the framework in terms of 5 F's. The first F is foundation. Why are you having this conversation? What is the goal here? Articulating this to the other person lets them know why this conversation is necessary. What's the impact on the person or on the team? Maybe it's the impact on the product or service that they're delivering or even the customers. Again, there's a reason. You're not having the conversation just to have it. There's a greater impact, and that's what you're going to articulate in that foundation portion of the framework. The second piece of this framework is facts. Seriously, just the facts. You might start with just 1 or 2. This encourages you to separate circumstances from thoughts. Again, this is back to that self-coaching model. But when you go into conversations with a bunch of thoughts, it leaves room for misinterpretation. And it can make the rest of the conversation difficult and solutions more challenging to identify. So, for example, you may not want to go into a conversation with someone saying, you really need to stop being so rude. That's a thought. And they may be having a very different thought. So you want to go in this section and talk about facts. Here's some feedback that we've received from customers. Here's some emails that we've seen that maybe could be worded differently. Bring it to the facts. Again, you wouldn't want to come in and say, you know what, you're just not working quickly enough. That may feel very true, but it's hard for a person to solve for a thought. When you say, here's some benchmarks, or here's some things that we need to see on a daily basis, those are things that those facts can reveal solutions, and those facts can be addressed. So really important here to separate circumstances from thoughts, and in this section, bring forward facts for the person to address. The third portion can sometimes be the most difficult, and that is feedback. Allowing the person a moment to have their own thoughts, to give you some feedback. What are they thinking? What are they feeling at this point? Maybe they have other data that they want to bring. Maybe they have other facts. Maybe they have questions. Allowing this portion of the difficult conversation, again, can be hard, but the more you do it, the stronger you're going to become in allowing a person to have their thoughts and have their feelings, and then you can address them as well. After the feedback, you want to move forward with the last 2 pieces, a framework and follow-up. Leaving out these 2 pieces is another reason why people don't have difficult conversations. How many times have you gone into a conversation, you've mustered up the strength, you've mustered up the motivation and the confidence, you have the conversation, you say what you think you need to say, everybody leaves, and you realize you don't know what's going to happen next. Now you have to have another difficult conversation. You have to bring the person in again to say what you want to do, how you're going to move forward, when you're going to know if this solution was implemented. Do it in your current conversation. So you've laid the foundation, you've articulated the facts. It can be collaborative, or it could be something that you bring to the table, but you don't want to leave this piece out. You also want to talk about follow-up. What are you going to do for follow-up? How are you going to follow up? How often will you follow up? How will you know when your expectations are met? Articulate these during the conversation. So there's your 5 F's: foundation, facts, feedback, framework or your plan, and follow-up. Just a few notes on this framework. You can use this structure for any kind of conversation. If you are feeling like it is difficult, you can use this framework. Sometimes it can feel difficult to ask for what you need. Again, maybe it's a promotion, but maybe it's additional resources. You can use this framework to ask for those things, to bring your case forward. You can use it if you're having to give a presentation on something that you've never done before and it feels difficult. Start with this framework. The other way you can use this framework is when someone is having a difficult conversation with you. You can give them the gift of this framework. You can tell if they're struggling. You can tell if you're not getting the information you need. You can ask for the facts. Hey, I hear you saying that I'm not professional enough, but could you give me a scenario where that played out? That's asking for facts. You also can ask for a framework. Hey, this has been great. I understand what you're saying. Let's talk about when we're going to follow up on this. You can ask for those things. Give someone else the gift of this framework. This will not only evolve and expand your abilities as a leader, but it also makes a difference for the people around you, because it changes culture when conversations are had in a articulate, clear, and meaningful way. And so using this framework, again, it impacts you, it impacts the person you're having the conversation with, and all of the people on your team. This is how culture change will happen. So start having those difficult conversations with clarity and with confidence.